Okay, so for these functions, there's three of them here. They want us to find the domain and the range. We were finding the domain before, and we talked about those two domain issues, like can't divide by 0, can't take the even root of a negative number. So we'll keep those things in mind, but we're going to do both the domain and the range. Now in this first function, is there any restriction on the domain? Is there anything that says, hey, I might be dividing by 0? No, there's no division in it. And is there any radical that I'm taking? No, there's no radicals. So the domain is all real numbers here. So when we're restricting the range, it's kind of like, well, is there anything that I can't get out, you know? Domain is there anything I can't put in? Domain is there anything I can't get out? This is polynomial, and the range is all real numbers. It's a polynomial function. We'll learn more about that when we do graphs of these functions and transformations, but for now we'll just say that. Okay, so this next one, okay, you're probably going, wait a minute, there's going to be a problem because there's division. So we know x cannot be -1, right? Because then we'd be divided by 0, and then that's a problem. So the domain is going to be from -infinity to -1, union -1 to infinity. Now, the domain can be more complicated than just like a linear, a first degree polynomial, but this isn't, so we haven't seen one of those today so far, or in these examples in 3.2. Okay, so that's the domain. Now, is there anything that you can't get out? Like 2 over x plus 1, is there anything it can't equal? It can't equal 0. That is never going to equal 0. The only way to get 0 is if the numerator were 0. So I'm actually not ever going to get 0 as an output. So that means my range is going to go from -infinity to 0, union 0 to infinity. Now you might say, well, how do I know that? I can see the numerator isn't 0, but like, how do I know all the other numbers work? If you put any number in here, except 0, 2x plus 1 equals 5, you can solve that. We've solved those equations. So that's just an example, but 0 would be a problem. Okay. Find the domain and range of this one. Okay, so it's got a square root in it. So we know that x plus 4 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Remember, we take what's under the square root or the even root and say it's got to be greater than or equal to 0 because we can't have it be negative. So x is greater than or equal to, not 0, -4. Okay, that tells us the domain. Our domain is going to be from -4 to infinity. But how am I going to get the range? Like, how am I going to get the output? Well, what happens if I put in -4? -4 is the smallest x value I can get. So let's look at what is f of -4. Well, that's going to be 2 times the square root of 0, 2 times 0, or 0. So the smallest output, I'm not going to get a negative number, right? Because I'm going to take the square root of it. So the smallest number I could get out would be 0. So my range is going to go from 0 to infinity. Okay? I hope that makes sense. We'll play around with them a little bit more, but domain and range.